You know where wisdom comes from? Learning from your mistakes. That's right. Today we're going to be covering Money Guy Misses Remastered.
It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
So I have to give you credit, Bo. This show is a redo or remix of our March 8th of 2013 show.
Was it really?
Here's how I came to this.
6 years
I had a prospect meeting from a Money Guy listener who he's been a prospect for going on 6 to 7 years now.
Right.
And when I went back through all of our email chains, he originally reached out to us when he said, I listened to these two shows and I thought they were so good, I wanted to reach out. And I was like, well, gosh, I ought to go see what those two shows were. So I went back and pulled the show notes. And then after I read the show notes, I went and listened to the audio, which was kind of hilarious.
Right.
Thank God. Fortunately, listening to the audio in 2013, and you can do this as well if you go to moneyguy.com, go to our archives. We actually sounded okay. Now, when I go back to the 2006 episodes, I want to cry. Yeah. I'm like, we ought to really take down those archives because they sound horrible. But back in 2013, it was pretty good. So I thought it was great that we could go back, kind of look at this as a teachable moment to go review some things that we've learned, because let's fast forward 6 years. There's a lot of cool things that I think we've even gotten more wisdom.
That's right. And what I think is so beautiful is not only do we get to learn from mistakes that we make, right? So we're even going to share some mistakes that the two of us have made over our careers, over our personal financial lives. But we also get to work with clients and prospects. And so we get to see a lot of really interesting perspectives of ways to make and ways not to make financial decisions.
That's exactly right.
If we can share that with you to help you avoid that, then that's just going to be gravy.
Hey, do me a favor. We're actually doing this live right now. If you've never tuned in for a live episode, remember we do this every other Tuesday. Right. But if you are catching this later when we post it, at least give us a subscription. So, give us a subscribe on YouTube or on, however you listen to your podcast. And then that way next time you'll get a blast.
That's right.
You'll at least get an update that we're doing this. And then if you haven't signed up, go to moneyguy.com, just give us your email address. And then that also, you're going to be able to pull off all of our archives. We do deliverables for these shows. It's going to be awesome.
The deliverables will only go out if you're on the email list. So if you want to get some of these cool templates, spreadsheets, things that we're sharing, you got to be on the email list to make sure you get them.
And as you can see, we're a little over a year into YouTube now, and we are so close to 20,000 subscribers. So go ahead and help us, push that number over 20,000 before we get to the next recording session. So let's start off with number one. Man, this one unfortunately is my mistake. Not having enough cash reserves. I want to explain this to you guys. We have to go pre-2008. And I want to take you guys back in that time period where it had been so long since real estate had any corrections, adjustments, and there was a saying that everybody said about real estate is God isn't making any more of it.
That's right.
So how could you go wrong with real estate?
Only
so
goes
everybody
up.
was, it was considered a very viable structure to go have those stretch goals, buy as big of a house as you possibly could, because you know what? It was going to appreciate and go up in value. And I was one of the beneficiaries of the fact that my house had appreciated to where I had 6 figures of equity. Mm-hmm. And the banks at this point in time were basically giving away access to that home equity line. They could do no-cost closings. They'd hook you up with a credit card or debit card. They'd hook you up with a checkbook.
Yep.
So there for a while, knowing I had 6 figures worth of equity in this house, I was like, why do I need cash? If I had an emergency, I'd just go write a check. I'd go transfer the money from my home equity line over, and then as the money comes in, I'll pay it down. It all seemed completely reasonable. Then 2008 and 2009, 2010 happened with real estate. And I quickly realized that what's on paper doesn't always equal reality. And you guys in the Money Guy family were a big part of my realization of this. I started getting emails in that 2008, 2009 saying, hey, Brian, I'm getting these emails from the bank saying my home equity line, because I was openly sharing this strategy, saying that they're freezing my home equity line. And I was like, uh-oh, cash. Because
what I thought was there.
Here's the truth of the matter with cash reserves. What do you want cash reserves for? They're there to protect you There's a reason we call it a rainy day fund.
Yep.
This is to protect you from all the bad stuff that can happen out there to you financially, whether it's, the water heater blowing up, it's you getting in a car accident, it's you losing your job.
Yep.
These are all things that could happen. Or the market just getting its teeth kicked in and everybody going, oh my goodness, the financial world is in turmoil. Cash is going to help you sleep better. So I had really put myself in a pickle by not having that best sleeping pill in the world, which is a nice cash reserves to get you through those bad moments. So I learned a valuable lesson there.
And I think what's so painful about the lesson that you learned is back then, pre-2008, you could earn money on your cash. If you had it in a money market, it was earning 4 or 5%. The real hard thing is to hold cash even when interest rates were super, super low and cash wasn't paying anything. I mean, now we're at least starting to see some reasonable rates.
You can get 2% all day long which is great.
So I want to just add just a little cherry to this, which is a little bit different. And it's a money guy miss about having emergency reserves, but I'm actually going to go the other way with it. Something a little counter to what you said. I have some friends, back in the day who would reach out and they would say, hey, look, I want to do this investing thing. I want to start out, but I don't have 6 months of emergency fund built up yet. I got to do that, got to do that, got to do that. And they would make the decision to do that instead of funding their Roth IRA.
Yep.
The only small caveat I'd put out there, because I think you should have emergency reserves, you should have cash. But recognize, if you're someone who's young and it looks like your income trajectory is going to move in a way where one day you might be out of the ability to make Roth contributions, whether you're single or married, there's income limits to being able to do that. You have a closing window for when you can put money into a Roth. And not only that, you are limited in how much you can put in by about $6,000 a year if you're under 50 right now. So one of the things that I tell young folks is, remember, that tax-free growth in Roth is so valuable. Even though your emergency fund might not be exactly where you want it to be, you may want to put money in there early on.
I'll go a step further. If you go to our order of operations episodes we've done in the past, there's a reason we start off. One of the first things you want to do is have $1,000. But after you get past $1,000 or having your insurance deductible covered, you got to make sure you get that free matching money from your employer. You got to take advantage of the Roth IRA. And then, yes, it's aspirational to come back and get 3 to 6 months of cash reserves. I completely agree with you on that. And then another thing, if you know you have something coming up in the next 3 years, engagement rings, new car down payment, house down payment, don't get cute with it and have that money out there in aggressive investments. That stuff needs to be somewhat liquid, very liquid actually. So let's move on to number 2. Know what you're investing in. This is another one that I'm going to self-reflect on.
I love when we're talking about your mistakes.
Well, we're getting to yours. I made sure that when I was putting this recipe together that there was equal parts Brian and Bo. But because I'm older, I'm an old geezer, getting to be an old geezer, I've got a few more opportunities to make mistakes. Sure. When I first started managing money, I realized I came out of college in the mid-90s, immediately started helping with managing money. Mm-hmm. And then, and I've shared with you guys, I don't come from a lot of money. Right. But my dad had got laid off when he was in his late 40s, or the company restructured, so he had an IRA rollover that was a little, $100,000 or $200,000. Right. And they had some savings and stuff. And then, of course, who are your first people that you help out with when you're green behind the ears?
Oh, your parents.
Your family and friends. That's why I'm always so scared of anybody who immediately comes out of school and they think that they are completely experts, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I'm just sharing my mistakes and faults. So I started managing money, and I decided I'm going to help my parents. And I was like, if it's good enough for rich guys, it's good enough for my parents. Because one of the things we were pushing at the firm I was working with were these separate account managers that were buying individual holdings for clients. And here's why these things seemed right. They're sexy. Yeah. Because what do rich people buy? The rich people are buying, managers that know how to do things better than everybody else.
Pick and choose,
It has sizzle to it. There's a reason this thing is sexy, and it has exclusivity to it because, anybody can go buy a mutual fund, but you've got a separate account manager.
Own manager do it.
Yeah, so I thought this thing was going to be perfect. And like I said, if it was good enough for the rich guys, it's good enough for my parents. And that's where I thought we should be. Yeah. But here's custom is not exactly as the brochure lays it out to be. And I want to give you some examples. My father, shortly after we set up this $100,000 and one manager in the large cap arena, which think about that. The way we talk about index investing and everything else, on the whole, just a mistake all the way around when we're talking about misses. But he started calling me like, Brian, I went to the mailbox today. I had a confirmation for 5 shares of this stock, 5 shares of this stock, 5 shares of this stock. What is all this?
So you need a wheelbarrow to probably get all the mail from the mailbox.
5 shares? You're going to have a bunch of 5 shares? And then, so that was like, wow, okay. And then because we were buying 5 shares, there was annual news, there was annual, shareholder letters, there was proxies, there was all kind of stuff. My father, it was attack of the mail. My father started calling, what's going on, son? I got all this stuff because the attorneys are going to make sure that they're covered by sending out all the disclosures and the requirements. So everything was showing up. And I realized that we had a portfolio of a mess. It was truly a mess. And here's the thing that sometimes simple is better. If you get fed up with and I don't know why you would, but let's just say you need to get out of your S&P 500 index fund. What do?
Go press sell.
Yeah, if you're selling the ETF or you're selling the mutual fund, you basically type in the symbol, boom,
It's
gone.
that easy.
What do you do when you have a portfolio of 70 individual holdings where the average share, you have 4 to 5 shares of each holding?
You got to go in there and place a trade for each one of those.
We are at least fortunate now that you can get trades for $5,
$4.95.
Realize I did this all back in the late 90s when there was not $5 trades. I mean, this was much, much more expensive. I felt like the biggest knucklehead for putting my family through this. So know what you're investing in. I'm going to transition this away from me and tell you what we see with our clients all the time. And I got in trouble for this one a few weeks ago with my wife. And she's like, don't you ever call it that again around our friends.
So here we are. Your wife forbade you from saying it, so now we're about to say it in front of all of America, the whole world
because
on the show?
It's educational. We were out with a couple friend of ours, and they're in the medical profession.
Okay.
And we got on it, because people, when they know what you do for a living, they ask you some questions. And I said, here's the biggest thing you got to watch out for. Make sure you avoid dumb doctor deals. I say that so often that I saw nothing wrong with calling it a dumb doctor deal.
Right.
My wife took issue with it later and said, that sounded very condescending. And I was like, look, I think they're brilliant.
You're not calling the doctors dumb. You're saying the deals
that is what these deals, because
dumb.
let's face it, they require you to be an accredited investor. It's all these sexy private placement type deals where they'll give you an offering document, and the offering document will say you're going to go broke, you're going to lose it all, and it's going to cost this, it's going to cost that. We see these things. That's not to say that all private deals are bad.
That's right.
But I'm just telling you that you just need to know what you're investing in, and a lot of people make that mistake.
And I think a lot of people choose to employ their money into those types of investments because of the sex appeal of it, and less so because it's a sound fundamental investment.
Once again, instead of going through the order of operations, people will say, I make great income. I'm affluent. I'm going to do this the sexy way. I'm going to do guys who are in my position, they don't invest in these index funds. We're going to step above that. And that's a mistake. That's that ego. There's all kind of things that are playing into that. Here's another one that I made a mistake on, then we'll move on to number 3. Vacation rental property.
Oh, yeah.
This was supposed to be an investment for me. I had a group of CPAs, dentists, that had gotten one heck of a deal by a CPA client that had gotten in financial trouble.
Right.
We got a deal for about a year. Then the market went to crud, and we realized everybody else got a better deal than we got. I mean, it was the very educational. And you think, here's the sizzle and sexy on vacation property. I was like, man, not only are we going to be own property in a cool part on the beach of Florida, we're going to get to use this. I'm going to build family memories down there using this. That's malarkey. You know why? Because the times you want to use it, you can't use it because it rents too expensive, and you want people to use it. So the only times you get to go down there is when it's cold. Nobody wants to be walking on the beach when the water crashes up and then you immediately get goosebumps because it's freezing. And then you're down there fixing water damage, sheetrock holes, hanging new TVs, checking to see what was stolen by the tenants. By the way, when you have rental property, especially like vacation rental property, usually when you buy a couch last, what, a decade?
I was going to say 10
Rental
years.
property, 3 years. 3 years. I don't know what these people are doing on the couches, but the couch is going to last 3 years. So it's a complete failure. So I know there's a lot of other people who have made money with vacation rental properties doing things, but just go into it with your eyes wide open. It's not always as good as the brochure or as your friends might present it to be.
I think, again, the big takeaway there isn't that rental property or vacation property is a bad thing necessarily. It's that the reason you bought is you just thought you were getting a great deal.
Yeah.
Or you thought that there was some vision that it was going to be something it
And my
wasn't.
financial order of operations was way out of whack.
Yeah,
I had
that makes
no
sense.
business buying that vacation rental property where I was. I mean, I was doing well. I was, saving for retirement, saving for the future, but I had nowhere near the net worth to be
Substantiate
buying
that. Yep.
a vacation rental. But it sure sounded sexy as heck. I mean, you tell people I got a place down in Florida, you sound like a big dog, but I was crying on the inside every time that I looked at the financials. Because that's the other thing. I promise we'll move on. Once you make over a certain, everybody says, well, you get a great tax deduction.
Yeah, I want to go buy a rental property.
Yeah, rental property, once you make over a certain sum of money, they make you defer those annual losses until you sell the thing. So you end up getting so excited to sell this thing at a much lower price than you probably should have, just so you can unlock the $50,000 of losses that have been embedded over the last decade. So not a great deal, but we'll keep moving on. Because realize there's a whole industry that will help you part with your money. Madison Avenue, there's manipulators, advertising execs, they'll work with you, and that you'll notice that trend comes up later. Number 3, don't invest money without a core investment philosophy. What is your why? Now, a lot of you guys will hire somebody to help you with your investments or your financial plan. I think this ought to be one of the first things you ask them is, what is your core philosophy on how you manage money, how you invest it, and then also apply this to yourself as well.
Yep.
This one, I promise we're going to switch the script on you. We're going to get all my mistakes out there first.
If we just camped on yours, that actually works out a lot better for me.
I have a thing that I don't talk about it as much, but I tell people, avoid chasing the hot dot. This used to be a bigger problem back when magazines, I guess you can still do this on the web, but Kiplinger's would come out with the best performing mutual funds of 1997.
Right.
And you go look at these funds and you'd be like, okay, well, that thing was the best performing in 1997. It's probably going to be the dog next 2 years, but that wasn't the logic of the way these things were sold. It was chasing the hot dot.
Yep.
I started to realize that Roth IRAs came out in the 90s. Mm-hmm. I still qualified for Roth IRAs. I bought a Roth IRA. I funded a Roth IRA. And then I came out in the mid-90s. And this might sound crazy now, especially for young whippersnappers. The internet was brand new back in the 90s.
I guess I'm the young whippersnapper.
Brand new. Well, we have other whippersnappers that are in the chat room right now. And so it's kind of like Bitcoin is now. Bitcoin has this excitement around it. People, especially now it's a dog. Everybody's like, oh, Bitcoin, because it got crushed.
Right.
But a year and a half ago,
it was all the rage.
Man, we even had some, and you know who you are in the chat room, guys, that were throwing a little bit out there just to play around with this thing. It was the same way with the internet. I'm guilty of this too with chasing the hot dot. Is there was what was called the internet fund or internet investments in general, because it didn't matter if you had a just pile of poop. If you put .com on it in the 90s, all of a sudden, everybody in the private sector wanted to invest in it. You could get private deals. You could do all kind of crazy stuff. So I invested $2,000 because that's what you could put into IRAs back in the day. That $2,000 within 3 months turned into $4,000.
That's incredible.
That's not supposed to be the way things work.
That's incredible. So you had it all figured out at that point.
I was such a humble investor that I went and told everybody. I went and told all my friends what a genius I was. I was the cocktail story that you hear me talking about. Be careful of your friends because they never tell you their losses. They only tell you their wins.
Tell you the winners.
So I was telling my friends. So I told my friends about it. So then they go and set up IRAs, which is that's a win. That's a positive thing.
Right.
They put $2,000 and it turns into $3,000. We're all geniuses at this point. What could go wrong here? Because their 2 turned to 3, my 4 turned to 6. I'm like, this investing thing is the greatest thing on earth.
Right.
And then the rest of the story happened. I didn't ride this thing to zero, but I did not. When I sold it, it was not $1,000. Oh. So my 2,000 turned to 6. The 6 rode all the way down to, and this is the number that pops in my head, and my brain does crazy, $876. I think I turned.
How did you actually remember that number?
Because I'm telling you, this burned to my core that I let $6,000, which you think about if I would have diversified that $6,000 into an S&P 500 fund, what that could be worth today. $876, I was so emotionally strained by it. I want to forget that money ever existed. So pay attention to that stuff. Like I said, Bitcoin is the perfect distraction. It goes back to the point of don't invest without a core investment philosophy. My mistake there was I was rudderless. I was just investing because that's where I was chasing the hot dot. I can think about my sister-in-law. She brought me her 401k to look at one year, and I was like, what was your core? What was your investment philosophy? Why did you choose these funds? I chose everything with growth in the title.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think the big thing that you're saying is if you're going to invest in something, if you're going to employ your dollars to go work for it, you have to have a reason. And because some of the folks on here are mentioning Bitcoin, and there are some fans of that, and that's great. If you're someone who wants to invest in Bitcoin and you understand the technology, just make sure you understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, not just because it's the next hot thing or because your neighbor told you how much money they make.
I mean, even some of the core components of the internet fund probably turned out to be spectacular, but that did not need to be my core investment philosophy. And that's so let me tell you, because a lot of you guys, you might be in prospect land and you're like, well, I hear you talking about this and you're saying ask an investment advisor, what's your core investment philosophy? So here's what ours is that I think during good markets, good times and good things are going on in the economy, I want you to get 2/3 of the 3/4 of the upside.
Whoa. You didn't say outperform. You didn't say beat it. You didn't say I want to go out there and knock the cover off the ball. You said I want to get you a lot of it, but not all of it.
Yeah. Red flags when somebody says they can beat the market. We'll come back to that in a bit, but just know we want not all of it because we're going to do this concept called diversification. And here's the truth of the matter. Rising tides lift all boats, meaning that you can't tell who's good, who's bad when things are cranking. And I love, Warren Buffett has a great saying, and I'm going to read the quote. I was smart enough to go pull the quote, whereas when we did this show in 2013, I did not, because I butchered it.
Kind of tried to remember.
So here's the quote from Uncle Warren. He says, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. It's so true. I mean,
it's
it is
true in
really,
the investment world.
It is so you can take all the risk in the world. In Bitcoin, the internet fund, you choose whatever your flavor is of what's doing awesome. There can be too much of a good thing if you're not thinking about what your core philosophy is. And it's when those things go ugly, you need to have a philosophy that protects you on the other side. Because remember, I didn't say I want all of it. I only want 2/3 or 3/4 of the upside because I'm going to diversify so I only have a quarter to a half of the downside potential. That's a better balancing core philosophy of understanding how diversification works.
Another big thing is that in our opinion, and you may differ from this, investing is just one piece of the puzzle. Your rate of return and your investment strategy should complement ultimately what your goals are. Now, some folks might have a goal. They want to go out there and turn $1 million into $1 billion, and that's fine. But most folks just want to be able to do what they want to do, when they want to do it, the way they want to do it.
Yeah.
If that's what you want, your investment philosophy should mirror that, should match that.
Yeah, you don't want to take on too much risk.
Right.
You also want to make sure you have some type of structure or plan that addresses the behavioral restrictions that really keep you headed on the path to failure if you're not careful. Right. So let's talk about number 4. And this is a great segue based upon what we were just talking about. Be honest about blind spots and limitations. Know what you know and know what you don't know. And guess whose time it is to get on the hot seat?
All right, so
old Sweats.
I was so fortunate that I went to the finest university in all the land. I graduated from the University of Georgia. I have a financial planning degree from there. And when I came out, I did.
That made you an expert, right?
It made me an expert.
Having that degree made you an expert.
As soon as they put my name on that paper, I was ready to tell anybody and everybody exactly what they should do and how they should manage their money.
If we'd have been the same age, you could have gotten in the internet fund too.
I would have been in there right with you. And so what ended up happening is I was so ambitious and so confident and so sure of myself, I decided I was going to get an internship where I could start calling on all of the folks that I knew in the community, all of my family, all of my friends, and I was going to go start telling them all the decisions that they should be making with their finances, and specifically the products that they should buy that paid me well, that were going to be in their best interest.
By the way, Bo comes from a background, if y'all didn't know, this might be a dirty little secret. He was pushing life insurance. Look, we buy a lot of, we own a lot of life insurance. We recommend life insurance. But Bo started his career selling life insurance.
That's exactly
you were kind of getting close to it, but you weren't telling everybody that you were out there selling life insurance.
I was out there selling life insurance, and I realized pretty quickly that maybe I didn't know quite enough to be able to be offering the advice that I put in there. So, I didn't realize that one of my limitations was all of my knowledge was purely academic. I'd gone through school and I'd learned some things and I'd gone through some sales training, but I probably, at the ripe age of 20 years old when I started doing this, was ready to start telling people exactly what they should be doing with their finances.
Yeah, we talk about this. This is something we tell people a lot. It really does, and this goes back to my internet fund story that I was sharing too, is that it takes 10,000 hours to develop expert status, that mastery. And we all know that, based upon a 2,000 hour work year, that's about 5 years of service. That's that whole Outliers from Malcolm Gladwell and so forth. I mean, that is a great concept to know, and it's the same thing with kind of investing. I think it takes a while for an associate at a financial planning firm or somebody who's doing investment management to kind of understand how everything works, to figure out, what they truly believe of the financial world, and then have some core competency that gets built in. And that's you too. A lot of you guys, when you do it yourself and figure it out, I will tell you, my first 2 investments, this is embarrassing, was the regional bank fund and the special equity fund from John Hancock. And I didn't even buy the best share class. I bought a B share, which had a huge sales charge on the back end. Let's be honest about what you know and what your blind spots are when you first start doing something.
And I will chalk that one up to inexperience and a bit of naivety. Another thing you can struggle from is overconfidence. So one of the very first things that I did is I took my very first investment course. Fortunately, a lot of my mistakes, and a lot of yours too, happened when we were young. I took my very first investment course, and I decided I was going to go out and pick some stocks. And I had recognized that a toy company at the time, a big toy company, had just had a major recall. So I was, serving tables, waiting, serving as a waiter at Chili's.
Sure.
I had this thing figured out that because this toy company had a big recall, I was going to go put some money into that. And I had heard about this Sirius satellite thing, and they were going to be merging with XM. And so as soon as that merger happened, I was the only person who had figured out that was going to be the greatest investment in the world. So I went and
you're a contrarian. You must have read some Uncle Warren Buffett at some point.
I had figured this thing out. No one else had. So I went and dumped some money into these stocks. And the rest of the story, it didn't turn out so well. I didn't recognize early on the fact that I thought I had figured something out. I was not nearly as smart as I thought that I was.
And that's why I do go back. I've already picked on myself, but be careful of the cocktail party discussions. Right. I've had a lot of people that will tell you their wins. They never tell you their losses. So be careful when you're coming across the person bragging to you about their individual stock prowess. Number 5, this ties in. I love how these things kind of run together.
This is one we got to do together, fortunately. We got to screw this one up together.
Don't gamble and call it investing. Options, futures, currency trading, and let's throw Bitcoin in there too. I think it hits all those high points.
Look, I'm sorry that he's just attacking Bitcoin so much. I'm
not attacking Bitcoin. I'm just telling you that it can be somewhat speculative.
It can be speculative, and a lot of folks who don't know what they're doing are getting it. I will agree with that.
Here's the quote that I put on this. This is from one of my favorite movies from years ago. If you can't spot the sucker in your first half hour at the table, then you are the sucker.
I love it. I think
that's from Rounders. Yep. If y'all don't, what's funny is that when you go back and watch that, how young Matt Damon looks, Ed Norton. And those guys really got into poker after doing this stuff. They tried to be students of the game. And I think that's what happens to us when we find out about people who are making money doing stock options. With currency trading, futures, there's all kind of ways. And levered investing. Let's talk about levered investing. You can really maximize these things. Here's something that I remember is that I was out shopping and there was a business card left on my windshield saying you could make it was like 50% in a month.
That's pretty solid.
It was going to be like 1,000% return with stock options. I was like, if you didn't know any better, this sounds like a great thing. But here's the problem. Look, I want you to know, it's just like we were picking on Bitcoin, but same thing with stock options is that stock options actually serve a very important role. If you have a highly concentrated position, say you're an insider or you just from working at a company for years, there's all kind of cool strategies you can use stock options for to help you. Like I've done collar strategies. You can also turn them. You can sell calls to create an income stream off of the options. Really cool stuff. The problem when you speculate, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about speculating with stock options or gambling, if you want to just be honest. You can be, and this is the example, this is what Bo said. We came up with a strategy. This is when Bo was doing his CFA studies too. We thought we would come up with this brilliant hedge strategy.
Academic knowledge has led to a lot of my financial mistakes.
The real world works that way too. Is that we were going to go long on Apple options. We were going to go, not short, but we were going to buy puts, meaning we were betting against the direction of the stock price of Netflix at the time. Now, this is years ago. Here's a problem with stock options. They are time certain. You can be absolutely right with your decision, but you can be completely 100% wrong on your timing. And be at the party.
You don't get any points for getting it close.
So, and I'm going to focus, I'm not going to worry about the Apple because it did okay. I don't think we got crushed on Apple. But here's the problem with Netflix. Netflix, you guys, because we even have some employees from Netflix, they went through a rapid growth period where they went up to like $200 a share, but then they had some bad news come out, or I think they were getting rid of the disc.
There's some big change in the structure.
There's a huge change. The price went from $200 a share down to $42 very rapidly. Guess what? It happened 3 weeks after our options all expired.
3 weeks after what we were sure was going to happen, we just didn't pick the right time.
It was very much an emotional, educational experience because we learned once again that you could be 100% right on your decision making and then still run a few $1,000s to zero very rapidly. So we tell you this stuff, and look, it's embarrassing looking at it now, but we were gambling. This was not part of a core investment philosophy. It was not part of an order of operations. We thought it would be sexy. We thought it'd be cool. We never did this with client money. This was just me and you
personal
having fun.
And it was and I will give us some credit. We did it with a small sum of money that wasn't going to change the overall direction of our portfolio.
Well, the truth of the matter, here's how this all starts. The worst thing that can happen to you with these speculative strategies is to actually make money on your first one.
Oh, yeah.
Because I took $1,000. Remember what happened? I took $1,000. We turned it into about $3,500 within 2 weeks on Apple options.
That's right.
We decided we were going to take that $3,500 and try to turn it into $1 million. I think. I don't know what our goal was. We turned that $3,500 into zero. So
Very
that's like I said, the worst thing that can happen is you get it right the first time. You gotta. There's so many learning opportunities to know not to gamble and speculate. You got to go through that financial order of operations to be successful. Number 6, emotional attachment to holdings.
Oh man, this one's so deep.
This is a client one. I've dealt with. How many people have we talked to over the decades, Bo, that have told you when you ask them what their net worth is, they'll say, well, currently or the peak I was ever. Because there have been executives that were multiple $1 million that have been crushed by having their personal capital, meaning their human capital, as well as their investment capital, all tied into the exact same place. And it's all because they were emotionally attached to that stock. A lot of you guys that work for companies, I think, the insider trading is illegal. But the truth of it be known, insiders, unless it's like a transaction that's coming up, if it's just the day-to-day operations, insiders sometimes their optimism can actually work against them.
The fact that you know the company intimately and you feel invested in it can actually skew what's actually true about the company.
It's the same reason we think, you watch American Idol and you see this doting parent just so excited for maybe the voices, I don't know. American Idol's so old school now, but you see this doting parent that can't wait for Junior or their daughter to sing, and then you hear them sing, and then back when you're talking about American Idol, Simon would just rip them up, and you'd be like, what the heck were those parents doing, thinking that they could put their kid out there and who's tone deaf and they're going to be okay? No, it's the same thing with insiders with stocks. Sometimes they think that their stock is just so beautiful, so good. But meanwhile, it gets ripped to shreds out there in the market cycles. So pay attention to human capital, because I worked with Lucent employees in Atlanta. There's other things where it's heartbreaking if you have so much tied into it. It's nice if you can at least go into it with your eyes open and not make mistakes. Now, don't mishear me. I'm not saying that RSUs, employee stock purchase plans, stock options that you might get through your employer, those are all incredible opportunities. Usually they're giving you discounts, they're giving you those are golden handcuff moments where they're trying to keep you excited and staying working there. I'm just saying go into the experience fully understanding what the risks are so you can make an educated decision and have a plan of action.
I think, a quick public service announcement. If you are somebody who does have access to employer incentives, whether it be options, RSAs, RSUs, employee stock purchase plan, if you don't have a strategy for it, if you haven't actually thought about how those plans work together independently, as well as with your investment portfolio and as well as with your tax situation, there's a big chance that you could be missing out on a lot of tax opportunity and potentially even some free money. So if you are someone who has those incentives, make sure you understand what they are and how you can best utilize those.
Yeah, no doubt. Bo, I love this next one.
Uh-oh. That means it's going to be.
It's going to be fun.
You know what? This one's on
number 7. Don't defend it before I even get it out.
Yeah, I'm physically slouching down.
Don't be too cheap. And I put cut your nose off to spite your face. Needless, self-destructive overreaction to a problem. So here's why I want to set the tape. I know the show notes say that you're going to set this up, but you won't be honest.
No, I won't.
Bo doesn't like to cut his grass.
I don't know if it's an allergy or what, but I kind of get hivey and red.
So here's what I think is funny. The first one is really educational. The second one's just weird. The first one is educational in the fact that I remember when you brought this. This was your house back in Georgia.
Yep.
Maybe I shouldn't give so many details, but we could get ourselves in trouble with some of these people. But I remember you telling me you had figured out the perfect deal to getting your grass cut. Is that you had a neighbor who gave you a sweetheart deal that he would cut your grass if you just agree to pay him.
Because he had a big old fancy lawnmower you ride around.
You're like, this is great. I'm not going to have to buy my own lawnmower.
Awesome.
I'm just going to let him cut the grass.
Yep.
The problem is, he didn't come cut your grass very frequently, did he?
It sure didn't look like a well-manicured lawn, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, the yard was getting no treatments. It was not getting cut. But what were you getting?
I got an invoice.
You still got invoices.
And I got big invoices.
So your desire of being cheap led you to getting invoices for services you weren't even getting, and then an awkward conversation to have with a neighbor.
With a neighbor, with like a human being that's like a few doors down.
So fast forward, you move to Tennessee. You buy a house in Tennessee.
That's right.
And this one freaked me out when I heard this. I was like, man, the guy is not learning from past mistakes. I find out you have bought lawn equipment with a neighbor.
So here's what ended up happening. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to pay somebody else to cut my grass because that was so bad. So I guess I cut it myself, but I still
You figured out what was wrong in the first one was you didn't have enough skin in the equipment. Is that what it is? So now you half price it with somebody?
Yeah, so I decided my neighbor, because we have relatively small yards. It doesn't take a long time to cut the grass and stuff. So I said, hey, instead of us both going out, it's a brand new neighborhood, brand new construction. Instead of us both going out and buying our own, lawnmower and weed eater and blower, let's just go into this thing together and on the weekends.
The power of manipulation is strong within you.
Look,
young Padawan, because how do you get a neighbor to agree to this craziness? That's what I think is what's wild.
I'm going to throw this out there. While this one may be listed under Money Guy Miss, this one has not come back to bite me yet, because this has actually worked out well.
Until one of you moves, one of you gets divorced. So there's all kind of things that could go wrong with this.
We haven't had that conversation yet. We haven't had the what happens when somebody moves yet. But so far, so good. It's worked out, pretty well.
I have another one. This one's going to get us some hate mail. I'm so worried in the world of Dave Ramsey that if to say this one, I'm almost as like we're going to get blowback on this one.
Yep.
I'll say it though. And I put a disclaimer. I'm so scared to say this one. I'm going to put a disclaimer. Because used cars, but here's the disclaimer, that are naked and not protected by a warranty.
Yeah.
This hits us both.
You share yours first, and then I will go.
I'll tell you guys, what my first car, what my second car, my third car ever. My third car was a used Acura RL. Okay. This is when I was working, I had just left public accounting. I was working in asset management at a big financial planning firm. Bought this used RL, and this Acura was spectacular. I loved this car. It had a warranty the first 20,000 miles I owned it. It was great driving. The problem is I'm good at maintenance. So it asked for a timing belt. So I did the timing belt and changed all the belts and hoses or whatever you're supposed to do with a certain mileage. That's great. The problem is that when I had that repair work done, the guys who did the repair work, and I didn't realize this until after months had passed,
right?
Because you'll see what I mean by this. They didn't put a belt back on the air conditioning fan. So probably 6 months.
Took something apart, put it back together.
In Georgia, it's like me assembling a Kia. You end up with a bunch of stuff left over afterwards. It's the same thing with this auto repair shop that I was working with at the time. And the thing is Georgia's hot in the summer. I mean, it is like you cut the humidity in Georgia. So it probably at the time, I probably got this done in the winter, no big deal.
Right.
Summer comes, air conditioner's working, but what I don't realize is poor air conditioner is no longer getting the cooling fan to cool the compressor down. So the compressor goes out on the air conditioner. Air conditioners on cars are not cheap, and they're about impossible to get a good repair done. So that perfectly good used car, now it turned into the biggest headache or pain in the rear end for me for the next.
It's not because anything neglectful that you did.
That summer was the worst summer of probably because you'd have to either take it to get worked on or drive around with the windows down, sweating. I mean, there was not enough deodorant in the world to keep me from stinking driving around in a hot Georgia summer with no air conditioning. So I wanted to get rid of that car. I mean, that car probably single-handedly got me to buy my next car was a new car.
Yeah.
So you've had a similar experience.
Yeah, so I've had the same experience. So, we always hear this thing that it makes a lot of sense to buy used cars because whenever you buy a new car, there's so much depreciation that happens on the front end, you don't want to do that. And so a couple of years ago, my wife, when this was right after we first got married, we bought her a brand new Honda Accord. And it was an awesome car, and we did the nice one and all that good stuff. And it was fantastic. Well, then, we moved to Tennessee, and we started having some kids, and we decided, okay, we need an SUV. So we went to go buy this SUV. And at the time, the car that I was driving was the car that I had in college. It was an Acura TL. It's funny, we had almost the same car. That's weird. So I had an Acura TL that I was driving, and my wife was driving this Honda Accord. So we were going to buy a new SUV, and we had to decide which car we were going to trade in. Well, common sense says that I should probably trade in the 2005 Acura that had like 180,000 miles and keep driving the relatively new Honda Accord that had maybe like 30,000.
But you were thinking your commute's only a mile and a half.
I was thinking my commute is so short, and I knew what the trade-in value of the Accord was, and every single year it was just going to depreciate more and more and more. Well, my Acura was at basically residual value. It wasn't going to go down anymore, so the price of that was pretty much locked in. Well, I told myself, well, since my commute is so long and it's an Acura, it's going to last forever, I should trade in the nice 2013 nice Honda Accord with low mileage and keep driving the Acura. And so that's what we did, and what, of course, happened within no time.
You started having maintenance issues.
Started having maintenance issues on the old car.
And that's what I had to be careful because, I owned a lot of used cars before I bought my first new one. But there is a point with a lot of these used cars, if they're uncovered and out there and get high mileage, they can, when you start getting scared that you're going to be walking,
that's right.
You don't want, you have to be careful. So I just put that, don't be too cheap.
Yep.
Now I know we're going to get some blowback on that one, and I'm okay with it because I think that there does come a time that you want to graduate. We've done shows on that. It just gives you a little more peace of mind.
You need to know what kind of automobile purchase, and we've done, again, go look in our archives, go to moneyguy.com, search auto, and you can go look at how to buy a car and how to think about that. It depends on the type of car buyer that you are as to whether it makes sense to buy new or to buy used.
Yeah, because we're not against used. I'm just saying that there are some risk associated even with used. The last one, this will be kind of fun, then we'll move on. I just want to pick on my mom a little bit. I didn't know until I got married. We always bought our washing detergent at the big wholesale clubs in these big 5-gallon containers.
Right.
And you'd open it up and it'd just be a scoop of white powder. And I didn't, the thing about being a kid, you don't know
what you don't know.
Yeah, you just don't. It's just like, I didn't know about good toilet paper until I got to college. I didn't know about real washing detergent until I got married.
Right.
Because I just assumed when you wore a brand new shirt, within a month, it was just going to look faded.
It's going to be kind of worn out.
It's just going to be faded a little bit because that's just what happens when you wash clothes. Not knowing that when I married my wife and she started showing me better detergents, how you could keep the colors could last a little longer. I mean, and it's just one of those things. So I had to learn, from that. Washing detergents, you can be too cheap to where you're actually costing yourself on the wear and tear of your clothes. I know when my mom would babysit our oldest daughter when she was young, we just knew whatever we sent over there was going to come back different. It was going to come back different than just because of the way it was washed.
Well, I think, and this is one of the things you say all the time, Brian, and I think it was in Dr. Stanley's original book, and I think Sarah may have even revisited it in the next Minute Next Door. You got to understand when it's okay to spend money, when it's okay to spend on value, and when sometimes maybe you're just cheaping out, not for a good reason.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you can spend a lot of effort. Like I said, it's the whole thing of cut your nose off to spite your face.
That's right.
When you focus on the little things that really aren't changing your financial life. You're focusing on which credit card to use when you're not paying attention to the fact that you bought way too big of a house or you bought, there's nothing. You just heard me talk about used cars versus new cars. We got an email from somebody asking about a Tesla purchase.
Yep.
No business whatsoever looking at a Tesla purchase. That's a premium brand. If you can't pay cash and there's not other purposes for that money, you shouldn't be doing that with your money. So pay attention to those things. Number 8, measure twice on big life goals and purchases.
Did you mean to segue that good right there? Because you just mentioned the Tesla, and this was...
No, my whole life is Mr. Magoo.
That was pretty fantastic.
But just because you can afford the monthly payments doesn't mean you can truly afford the purchase.
I wish, if there was one thing that I could tell brand new married couples starting out, it's that.
Yeah.
The monthly payment is not what you can afford. The actual cost of the thing is what you have to afford. They get that wrong all the time, and it breaks my heart.
I think this goes back to, remember, there's a whole cottage industry in advertising where they are trying to tell you what you should be doing with your money. Mm-hmm. And this stuff comes into play. And I picked on you about this, Bo, not about expenditures, but just about how you run through. Once you're successful, you're driven. There's this internal thing within all of us that we're trying to say, where should we be at this station in our life? What are the purchases I should be making? What does a person of my stature? I hate that stuff's in there. You can say it's not, but we all are subjected to that. Those human conditions and the behavioral things that go on. And because of that, a lot of times we will get sold a bill of goods that doesn't bring happiness. I will go ahead and tell you, the more successful, I'm reading Jonathan Clement's book, and he has a whole section. The first section is on happiness. And I know this. When I'm reading this, I'm like, amen. I feel like I'm at church, just, yelling out amens on this thing, because there's so many things that confirm. If you think buying a nicer car, a nicer house is going to make you happy, it's just not going to do it. You can feel that. You're not going to fill that hole up. It's just a human condition. So you just have to make sure that you don't let somebody pitch you on extending your life. So measure twice, cut once on those big life purchases.
One thing I always hear you say too is don't fake success.
Yeah.
Again, I will wear this badge of honor. When I first, my senior year of high school, senior year of college, I went out and bought I had a truck that was paid for and drove fine. There was nothing wrong with it, but I was about to be a financial advisor. And did I mention that I had a degree from the University of Georgia? So I needed a nicer car. So I went out and bought this nicer car. I didn't need to do that. And I was just kind of faking the success that I hadn't really earned yet.
I thought, because I put this on there, a lot of us will talk about a big life change that you need to measure twice, cut once on, is what if you're going to change careers? What if you're going to start a business, do a side hustle or something like that? I always tell people you're going to notice planning is so paramount to most things that we talk about. You need to be a person that builds a plan for all scenarios. So let me give you the 3 that I always tell people. Have a plan of survival. This means that you've made a big decision, like change a job or start a business.
Or move.
Or a big move across country or something. A plan for survival means that you are looking at this situation and you're assuming the worst. You're going, what happens if this thing is going bad? What does that scenario look like? Let's plan for what will likely happen. That's going to be option 2. That's what you think really will happen. That's not the worst case scenario. It's kind of right in the middle road. And then the third one is, oh my God, we're going to be rich. That one's fun because it's great to be aspirational. It's no different than you putting a picture of you, of a swimsuit or something, if you're a trip, if you're trying or things, trying to keep you motivated on point with things. You can do the same thing by creating a business plan or a life plan or a financial plan for where you want to be too, because I think it will help you get motivated to move forward. But don't skip the step of the plan of survival option, which is going to be how bad things really could be if you're not doing it right.
And when you think about planning for your own finances and planning for financial independence, if your plan is dependent upon you making 12% per year every year from now until retirement, and you're going to save just the right amount of dollars to get you there, you may want to look like, okay, what happens if I only make 5%? What if that's my long-term trajectory? And make sure you're looking at that as a possibility that could happen.
We've hinted at this one, but I think it's worth repeating, is that you don't need to take unnecessary risk. Here's something that I think is so interesting. Becoming wealthy over your lifetime really is surprisingly simple. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, here's the secret to success. This could be its own thing.
That could be the name of our book. If we wrote a book, that could Being Rich is Easy.
It really is. I mean,
don't take that idea.
All you have to do, if you want to be rich, it's so simple. You have to save 15 to 20% of your gross income. That's an army of dollar bills, putting them to work for you. Avoid debt as much as reasonably possible.
Love it.
And then focus on investing in yourself and finding a job that truly doesn't feel like work.
That
really is those three magical ingredients. If you do those things, you will be successful. Unfortunately, simple does not mean that there's not going to be distractions or roadblocks or obviously struggles that you have during the process. But if you've won the financial game, this is the problem we have with people. They'll come to us and they will have done a great job of accumulating assets. So have won the financial game, but they still don't know what their number is to know when you start dialing the risk down or how to enjoy the spoils of good planning and building financial resources. All you need is, here's a perfect study. We had somebody that was in our life. I don't want to give too many details, but the father was super successful, had basically built financial independence. Wanted to help his son, who decided he wanted to get into real estate investing. Father took his resources, basically guaranteed a lot of the loans for the venture that they had created, and for a period of time it was successful. And then the real estate collapse occurred. Now said father was broke, and it went from financial independence at retirement age to dead broke, having give up a lot of stuff. That's unnecessary risk.
Because he took unnecessary risk.
Go watch ESPN's 30 for 30 titled Broke on all the professional athletes that had $30 million that are broke. So, that's why you just got to understand, measure twice on big life goals and purchases. Don't let somebody tell you when and where you should be. Kind of have a plan of action for everything.
That's perfect.
Number 9 was be careful of things that seem too good to be true, especially in the financial world.
If they're too good to be true, odds are they probably aren't.
I find it interesting when we do prospect meetings. People are so polite to us. They really are. They don't want to offend us, but you can sense what they're trying to ask in an indirect way. They'll start saying, "So, how will I know how things are going? Who holds my money? They're trying to figure out, are we crooks?"
Right. Yeah.
And I get it.
How do I know?
I completely get it.
Yeah.
So, what they're worried about, and we've had a little bit of time pass, but everybody knows old Bernie Madoff.
That's right.
Bernie Madoff got celebrities. He got charities. Bernie didn't care who he was taking his money as long as he got more money in. And we've talked about this, and you were exactly right, Bo. If things seem too good to be true in the financial world, it probably is. And we always tell people that you can protect yourself very easily, and there were a lot of red flags with Bernie Madoff. Here's the example I give everybody. Bernie was the guy, if you said, "Hey, Bernie, I want to sign up with you. Who do I make the checks payable to?" It would be like Bernie Madoff and Associates.
Securities or something like that.
You get monthly statements. You know where those monthly statements were printed and created by?
Like
Bernie Madoff and Associates.
Holdings,
So your quarterly report would come from Bernie Madoff. There was no separation. Who placed the trades for you? There was no separation of powers of who held your money, who invested your money, who reported on your money. There was no separation whatsoever. Bernie controlled everything. And all you had to do was go look at his ADV that was registered with the SEC, and you could see all these red flags of all the things. But people didn't care because, you know what? Bernie didn't lose money, according to Bernie.
That's right.
Because he was doing all the reporting. And since he wasn't losing money, who cares about all the red flags? We're just going to, our greed's going to kind of push us down this road of too good to be true.
So again, quick public service announcement. If you are somebody out there who is either working with an advisor or maybe you're thinking about working with an advisor or interviewing, make sure you ask for their ADV. It's the thing that tells you who the advisor is, what they do, how they get paid, have they ever been sued, have they ever stolen money from anybody. If you have that document, it's going to tell you everything you need to know, or at least a lot of the information you need to know about what that person is and how they do business.
Yeah, and the key thing is, like, we always tell people, you don't actually write checks to us. You know, there's always a third-party custodian, like a Fidelity Investments, a Charles Schwab. You write your checks to those people. You can still use their apps. You can use the Fidelity app. You can use Charles Schwab app. And then those account statements that give you accountability, give us accountability, will tie to what we report on quarterly reports. There's levels of separation for who holds the money versus, there's a reason the SEC is so curious about custody when they're doing exams and things. They want to know who's protecting the client, and that's something to pay attention to. Don't let greed be the thing that jades you into making a very bad decision.
I think that's perfect.
Here's the thing. This is kind of the closing moment. I know it's ridiculous. You're probably going, why would these guys share so much about their mistakes or their clients' mistakes? It's because we want you to learn. I really did mean it when I said the intro. The fact is that wisdom comes from learning from mistakes. And it probably is a little confessional that we shared so many of our mistakes, but I think it's good because when you see profiles of successful people, it seems almost so romantic that there's no ups and downs. It's just win after win after win. But the truth of the matter is that's not how life works. A lot of us get knocked down a lot, and it's really how you react to those misses, those money guy misses that you have. Do you get back on the horse and then also learn from it to create a plan of action so that you don't make those mistakes again?
That's exactly right. You know what we're going to do now is when we wrap up this show, we're going to do a Q&A. And if you guys out there listening live right now have some questions for us, you're going to be able to ask us. If you're someone who's not tuning in live with us, after every live episode, we do a question and answer. You can ask us anything about the show, personal finance, your situation. We'll choose some of them. Brian likes to give away tumblers. By the way, I think someone said, hey, I got my tumbler in the mail last week. It's awesome. It's a great conversation piece. That makes us excited that you're talking about us, letting people know.
And you're probably, I mean, we learn from this stuff. A lot of this also comes from working with clients. We work with clients all over the country. If you like what you're hearing, you can't believe that we just give it away like we do, because that is the abundance cycle, is that we're going to love on you, give you tons of free advice. All we ask in return is that when you get to a level of success that you need somebody to look over your shoulder and kind of look at your assets, or maybe you're getting stressed out about the size and success of what you've had, reach out to Abound Wealth. Reach out to Money Guy. If you go to our Contact Us page, you can write us directly on either moneyguy.com, aboundwealth.com. This is the greatest blessing in the world that we get to share our content. We have hearts of educators, and we just want to see you continue to be successful. So go check us out, moneyguy.com. If you have not connected with us or subscribed with us through all of our social media platforms, you're missing out. We'll be back with more great content soon.